Hi Planty Friend, it's Min. This is my very sad looking Tradescantia Stillamontana, and what has happened, I've left him far too long in his pot and he's become root bound. You can see the roots are coming out of the pot and that's caused a lot of the leaves to go brown and some of the stems to die off. So let's repot it, and the first thing I'm going to do is get my clean clippers, and I'm going to clean mine with a product called Isocol, which is just 70% alcohol. And what I'm going to do is use my clippers, cut away all the dead stems, cut away all the dead leaves, or pull the dead leaves away. This plant happens to be with another plant called a pink panther, so I'm going to repot them both together. And I'm going to set those stems aside and use those stems to propagate later on, and I'll show you how to do that as well. The potting mix I'm using today just consists of 70% premium potting mix and 30% perlite, nothing fancy. If you don't have perlite and you happen to have pumice, just replace it with pumice. If you don't have pumice or perlite, just replace it with vermiculite. And these just help to give the soil extra drainage. I'm also using a terracotta pot, and that's because I'm an overwater. I tend to kill my plants with overwatering them. So I'm going to use a terracotta pot, which allows the moisture in the soil to evaporate a lot more quickly. Once that's done, I'm also going to throw in a few pieces of horticultural charcoal. The reason why I do that is because horticultural charcoal not only cleans the water so that it doesn't have a funky smell from the soil, but also it helps to avoid things like bacteria and fungal disease in the soil. So with the original plant, I'm just going to pull it away from its original pot, get rid of all the old soil, then pop it in the new pot and backfill it with soil. I'm tapping it down just to try and get rid of any air pockets. You can also use a chopping stick and go around it to help get rid of those air pockets. These are my stem cuttings I set aside while I was pruning my original plant, and I'm going to use them to propagate new plant and also put these cuttings into the new pot to make it more full and lush. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose stems that are not completely brown, they still have leaves on it. I'm going to pull away the bottom leaves, and I'm going to cut the actual stem cutting from between 3 to 5 centimeters long. I'm going to make sure at least there's one set of node, if not two. And what I mean by a node is that a node is an area where the new roots will grow out of, and they're very easy to locate. So basically where you actually see there's a bump or you see leaves are growing from, that's where the node is located. I'm going to pull away the bottom leaves, cut below the node, and pop those cuttings to the side. I also have another plant called a pink panther, and these cuttings were actually from the original pot. They were growing together because these plants have their similar care tips, and I'm going to grow them together again to make the new plant or the new potted plant more full and lush. Then I'm going to get my chopstick, poke a hole in the soil, stick the new cutting in the soil, and just use the chopstick to gently pat it down to make sure it's more secured. Otherwise I can just use my hand to pat it down. And then once I've done that, I'm actually going to lightly water the plant. I don't want this plant to rot, and it can rot easily, and that's why it's in a terracotta pot, but I will still make sure it's thoroughly watered, going all around the plant and also in the center of the plant as well. Then I'm going to pop it into the area where it's more warm and also where it's receiving a lot of bright indirect sunlight. This plant can actually take direct sunlight, but only direct morning sunlight. It has a tendency to actually burn if it's sitting too much in the afternoon sunlight, especially the new cuttings. They're more delicate and fragile. So I would say the best thing to do is to pop in the area that receives as much bright indirect sunlight or a couple of hours of morning sunlight. And then that's it. That's how to repot this plant. So I've ended up with a lot more cuttings than what I actually need to pop into the repotted plant. So I'm going to use these cuttings and propagate a new plant and give that away to a friend. I've used same thing, terracotta pot, 70% premium potting mix with 30% perlite, a few pieces of horticultural charcoal in it. I'm going to get my cuttings, poke a hole into the soil, and pop the cutting into the soil, making sure the node is underneath the soil. And I'm actually going to pop a lot of cuttings into the new pot or the new propagated plant, just to make sure that the plant looks full and lush over time, compared to if I only use 1 or 2 cuttings. Also, the other part is, even though this plant is very easy to propagate, sometimes you can lose 1 or 2 cuttings here and there. So the more cuttings that you pop into the propagated pot, it's the more likely the success it is. So I'm actually going to put around about 20 cuttings into this pot. I'm also going to put it into the area that it receives a lot of bright indirect sunlight, and then water it as well. This one here, because it is a new propagated plant, I am actually going to tend to it a little bit more and make sure that the soil stays moist for like 2 or 3 weeks before I go back to the routine of letting the soil completely dry before I re-water the plant. And then in 6 months' time, these 2 plants are going to become full and lush, and it's going to look absolutely wonderful. If you like this content and you enjoyed today's content, have a watch of this video here where I explain how to take care of a Tradescantia, and I'll also put a link down below. And you take care, enjoy the day, and I'll see you next video. So go and watch it. Bye.